Hi, Mark here at 914 Rubber. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the rain trays and the differences in the lids and some of the variations that you'll see on some of these. Everything from different hardware, different mounting, and perhaps we can get you a little more familiar with what you actually have, especially if you have one of the early rain trays, because they are a little bit different of an animal. And yes, it is possible to retrofit the early rain tray with the late one. Matter of fact, that had been done many, many times in the past because they only made the one rain tray as it was more popular. We decided to make both of them so that you could actually have the correct part for your car. So let's talk about that now. So today I have two examples. This one's off of my 72 that's pretty much untouched. This particular car is the one that was a European delivery. It's got about 70,000 miles on it, so most of the hardware on this one is correct. This one is from a 75 Palma Green that was my son Taylor's. And it may or may not be correct on the hardware, but we'll dig into that and show how everything mounts on the late, which is much earlier to install, and what the differences are between the two. So let's talk first about the late rain tray. This is the one that there are the most available out there. At one point in time, somebody was making an aftermarket version of this one. I believe this one to be factory because it looks like it had been injection molded at some point. So this particular one has just a couple of points that attach it. Got a bolt here, we're missing one here, and then one here. And then in the indentations, we have a screw, which I believe had a washer in the original, and then a screw in the backside right here on the support. So I've removed the 6 screws and bolts that held this on, and it's real simple to remove this. All we have to do is literally just roll it right over. So this allows us access to the grill area where we would be able to take the grill off. I have some fasteners here that are not stock, but they do work just as well to be able to hold the grill in place. So I know that some of the fasteners that are installed here are not 100% correct. So this looks like it's pretty close to an original as far as the material that this is made out of, and I have a feeling because of the injection mold marks that it actually is an original. One of the things to note is the texture on the original has a little bit of texture on the inside. So we've got smooth on the back and a little bit of the texture on the inside, just like the original there. So this would be a good time if you wanted to remove the grill on these to be able to replace it. And just a note that the only letters that were gold on the 914 are on the 72. The rest were all silver. So if you're going to replace those, this would be a good time to do that. You can take the grill off, clean it up a little bit, repaint it, and put it back together. This one is missing the little rubber bumpers that go on the inside here to keep it from banging onto itself, and I'll show you what those are later. So when we sell these, we don't put the holes in them so that you have the ability to make any little adjustments that you want to. So what I've done here is I've punched the holes through where they're necessary, and there's little markers where the screws should be, so it's pretty easy to find those. And if you want to move the hole a little bit, feel free to do so, but it's a pretty simple process. So we're going to start by putting the side that is closest to the rear glass or the driver's and passenger compartment on first, as it's a little more difficult to line up in it that it screws, and just want to make sure that we start with that side first because it's going to be a little bit easier. You could really do it either way, but that makes it just a little bit easier to make sure that everything lines up. And it might just be my OCD, but I went ahead and added in some washers here just to give it a little more of a bite. You can actually use a bigger washer than that if you really want it. So I started here in the center to go ahead and start getting the side on the back of the deck lid as it opens attached here. It's a deeper side here where the water goes in. So you have to push down just a little bit to take some tension in the plastic and kind of preload that. You also see that the edge here isn't quite lined up there unless it gets some pressure on it. So all you have to do literally is just push it down and everything lines right up. So we have this all completely installed, and basically I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes only. This is the easier one to install. One thing to point out is on the back where the bolt comes through, you don't want too long of a bolt because, as you can see, the head pokes in here and you want that to be nice and flush. So that's one of the things, it is critical in the length of the bolt there that you put through that. So take a look at that before you go and do the complete install. There's a little bit of a gap there, but not much. and that should help you when you go to install these. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the early hoods as well as the early rain trays that go underneath there. There's a couple of differences in this one that you can notice. One, the letters themselves are all gold, so this is from a 72. That's a really easy way to see. As we start to flip this over, this isn't a difference, but this is one of the rubber bumpers that goes in the spring-loaded hinge there that helps it from banging on itself. So I highly recommend that you replace those if you haven't, and that will make your life a little bit easier when you open that up. Also, you're going to see that we have this nice little rubber bumper here. There's a little piece of metal in here. I'll show you what that looks like when we take it apart. We actually make these little rubber bumpers here, and this is to keep the deck lid from hitting your rear trunk. So that's what that's used for. There's also an extra tab right here that was not on the other one that is used to kind of hold that in position. And it's just a matter of cutting a hole to do that. But we're going to go ahead and take this apart here shortly. On the inside, you can see there's a little clip that's a standoff that goes right in the indentation right there. And what this does is this allows that back end to be held up. There's actually 3 of those. You can see one there. There's also one in the center here that you don't get as good of a view of, but this one is pretty typical, and that it's a little bit messed up. Somebody has tried to remove this at one point in time, and well, has done it some damage. The good news is that we do make these. If you need these rather than reharvest these, we can sell these to you as a kit. They're available on the website. Here's the original pop rivets that were used on these with what looks like a washer underneath. We just use a standard pop rivet. Somebody here's used a screw, which might not be a bad way to do that if you want to be able to remove that later without having to take the whole thing apart. So it's just a matter of how authentic you want to get. So we're going to go ahead and disassemble this now, and we can talk about how to put the new one on. So the way that these are removed on the backside is that you basically can take a screwdriver, get underneath there, and relieve that nut. It's a push nut, so you're going to have to break it basically as you take it apart, and those are usually not reusable. So in disassembling my early deck lid, I found something very interesting. I've never seen this spacer before right here. It was basically used to take up the gap that was in there. And it looks like it's about the same thickness as the rubber bumper spacers, other than the fact the diameter is a little bit different. I may try and make some of these just to make these available at some point, but currently we do not have these. So if you have one of these, save it. It's going to be on the driver's side, passenger side, where the latch is not. So there's a little bit of a gap there. That's what that does, is it takes that up. Also, this metal right here is quite important. As you can see, it's a little deformed. I'm going to basically hammer this straight, clean it up, and reuse this because this piece is not available. So if you have one of these, and more than likely if you have an early lid you do, the rubber's just broken off about where the metal is. So it was a little bit unusual that I actually had the rubber on my car. This is still a little bit flexible. Here's a little bit better view of that clip that we were looking at that's all bent up. You can see how that just basically attaches to the back of the screen where it pushes through, and then the push nut goes directly over it, just like it does on these. Here's a better look at the hanging bracket that goes on the little indentations here that has come off on these two right here. Here's the one that we've reproduced right next to it, so you can see how it just pop rivets directly on right there. So one of the things you're going to want to do while you're here is go ahead, before you put this back on, is clean this up a little bit and put some sort of a surface protectant on the inside of the tray here. Otherwise, once you get this back together, you'll be looking at it going, man, I wish I would have cleaned that up beforehand. So the way to install this is to get the back side in first. I'm going to go ahead and slip those directly over the little tabs, and then I'm going to pull that forward to go around the tabs here in the front before I put the screws in. As you can see, I've got all the tabs here in place, and as you look down there, you can see how it would be easy to come in from the back side here with a socket to be able to install the little push nut that needs to go on there. And that's how I would go about doing this. But for this demonstration, I'm not going to actually install this because I've got some cleaning still here to do on this thing, and it actually needs to get repainted. So here we are with the brand new rain tray completely installed, with the exception of the push nuts on the back that I mentioned earlier, on the early deck lid. The note here is that when you go to push those on, there's plenty of room to access these through the back here to be able to push those on. Right now they're just laying in place. Also got the little tabs here that I took a soldering iron and just basically used that to melt the little area where they needed to go through. And as you can see, I have that bushing installed back in here as I'd noted before. So hopefully I was able to show you a thing or two about the rain trays and take away some of the mystery how the early ones install. Thanks for joining us today.